Part 2 of 4. We're still going to be looking at histology, and again, I wouldn't, I would definitely advise, I wouldn't just pass over that study guide, but if you're having trouble with what the different types of epithelial tissue has, this lecture on connective tissue is going to make it a lot more difficult because there's a lot more tissues in connective tissue, which means there's a lot more memorization of where they are and what they do. So let's just jump right in and get started. So what are the properties that most connective tissues have in common? Discuss the type of cells found in connective tissue. We're going to explain the matrix of the connective tissue and describe its components. Name and classify 10 types of connective tissue. And then, can we visibly recognize these connective tissues from specimens or photographs? So connective tissue is a type of tissue in which cells usually occupy less space than the extracellular material. And we'll kind of see that when we're looking at it. So the cells, not a lot of space, a lot of extracellular material. This allows them to bind to organs, so bind organs to organ, and also support and protect organs. Most of the cells of connective tissue are not in direct contact with each other. They're separated by extracellular material. And that goes back to the cells are kind of small, they're not taking up much space. The extracellular material is what's really abundant in these types of tissue. Unlike epithelial, these are going to be highly vascular, richly supplied with blood vessels, and they're the most abundant, widely distributed, and histology variable of the primary tissues. So because it's the largest class, you have a lot of different types in here. Binding of organs, tendons and ligaments, support, bones and cartilage, physical protection, cranium, ribs, sternum, because those are bone, immune protection, white blood cells attack foreign invaders, because you might forget blood is a part of connective tissue, movement, bones, lever systems, we'll go over that in chapter 7. Storage, fat, calcium, phosphorus, all of those are going to be stored in bone and in adipose tissue, which is also connective tissue. Heat production, brown fat in bears and in infants, and also transport with the blood. So you have many different types of fibers. You have ones that contain collagen, ones that contain reticular fibers, and one that contain elastic fibers. These are kind of interesting because it's almost like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. These are very small, these are kind of in the middle, those are very big. These are tough, flexible, resist stretching. Collagen is usually what you hear when your skin starts to get wrinkly and it starts to sag. You're starting to lose these types of fibers. And then reticular, middle, elastic, we'll see all these in the different types of tissue. So you can have loose, or they can be dense. Loose just means there's a lot of space between the cells. Two different types, areolar and reticular. There's a lot of space in those. Dense, you have dense regular and dense irregular. Dense regular, all the wavy lines go in one direction. Dense irregular, all the wavy lines kind of go in different directions. But the main thing here is all have wavy lines, but this is going to have a lot of extracellular matrix or a lot of stuff. These are not going to have a lot of stuff, so you're going to see the fibers a lot more. The first one we're going to look at, areolar tissue. And here you clearly see areolar tissue has a lot of stuff. It has a lot of room for stuff. It's got cells and it's got these little fibers. Those very thin fibers are elastic fibers. You can see over here, this is the cartoon version of that. Elastic fibers are going to be this thin, small ones. The collagen fibers are going to be much thicker. You can't really see them over here. Kind of see that one back there, but because collagen fibers are a lot thicker, they're a lot more difficult to focus on with a microscope. You might focus on one part of the collagen fiber, but not the middle. But with these, the elastic fibers, they're a lot thinner, so they're easier to see. And now with all the other types of tissues, where are they? Underlies all epithelial and serous membranes between muscles, passes way for nerves and blood vessels. This makes sense. If it's between all the epithelium, you're going to need these layers so blood vessels can kind of go through. And you can see because of all this extracellular matrix, there's room for blood vessels and nerves to kind of move through. And if you look here, this kind of looks like a weird old spider web you might see at a house, or like an Airbnb that hasn't been rented out in a couple of years. You have all these little, spider webs that have all these little flies in them that kind of damage the spider web, so they're all going in not in one good pattern, they're going in many different directions. Next one, reticular. To me, this looks like broken glass. And these fibers are called reticular fibers. They're thicker than elastic fibers, and because they're reticular fibers, it's called reticular tissue. This is a mesh of reticular fibers and fibroblasts. It forms the framework for lymphatic organs, found in lymph nodes, spleen, thymus, and bone marrow. And you might not really understand it at this point, but these little cracks actually are little chambers. And in the spleen and in lymph nodes, they actually allow white blood cells to sit there, and when foreign pathogens go by them, they can attach themselves to them. If this is bone marrow, you'll see red blood cells being made. And if you see this, and if you look up reticular fibers on Google, you'll see a lot of reticular fibers. But in those reticular tissues, you'll see all these red little dots. And those are going to be found in bone marrow, where it's making red blood cells. And to me, those pictures kind of make reticular tissue look like cherry blossom trees in the spring. And now we get to the wavy lines. All the wavy lines are going in one direction. There's not much extracellular matrix. This has to be dense, regular connective tissue. Tendons attach muscles to bones, ligaments hold bones together. And because they're going in one line, it makes sense. A muscle to a bone is going in one direction. A bone is going to another bone in one direction. So ligaments and tendons are just going to be held together by something microscopically that looks like a rope, because all the fibers are going in one direction. Now, dense irregular is going in all these different irregular directions. And the difference between regular versus irregular is with this one, you don't really know where the force or the stress is going to come from. It can come from this direction, and there's some fibers going in this direction over here, there's some right there going in this direction. So this is going to withstand unpredictable stress. Deep layer of skin, capsules around organs, because you don't know where the stress is going to come from. You want to protect it from all sides. Those ligaments and tendons, you've all heard of breaking a ligament or tearing a tendon or a ligament. What happens is where a force, remember those wavy lines going across the screen? If you put a force in the opposite direction that those wavy lines are not going, that's how you rip or tear a tendon or a ligament. But with dense irregular, you don't know which way the stress is coming from, so it's protected on every side. Adipose, thermal insulation. Anchors, cushions, organs, eyeballs, kidneys, contributes to body contours. Most adult fat is called white fat. You have brown fat in fetuses, infants, and young children, and it's a heat-generating tissue. Brown fat is also going to be found in hibernating bears, and that's what they use to produce heat in the wintertime. So it's the same brown fat that you find in bears. You have it in fetus and infants. That's why they can start using this brown fat, and it's brown because there's blood vessels going through it that it's using to create heat. This is what it looks like, sometimes called white fat, where you just have the adipose cells and the adipose sites, and when they are storing lipids and cholesterol, they start to swell up, and when they lose them, they just kind of shrivel up. So they kind of look like a cluster of grapes. It's used for energy storage, insulation, cushioning, subcutaneous fat and organ packing, and again, brown fat, hibernating animals. It's used to produce heat. Cartilage. Cartilage, connective tissue, flexible, rubbery matrix, give shapes to the ear, tip of the nose, larynx. Also going to find different types of cartilage in your vertebrae and attaching ribs to your sternum. They're going to have chondroblasts. They're going to produce the matrix that surround themselves until they become trapped into little cavities called lacuna. They're going to have chondrocytes. These are cartilage cells that are going to be in the lacuna, very similar to the osteocytes and osteoblasts in bone. They're going to have a sheath of dense, regular connective tissue that surrounds elastic and most hyaline cartilage. But we'll kind of look at these when we look at the three different types of cartilage. No blood vessels. They heal very, very, very slowly. They have a rich matrix of chondroitin sulfate that contains collagen fibers. Types of cartilage. Cartilage is going to be depending on which fiber type it has. Hyaline, fibro, and elastic. Hyaline. Hyaline is kind of interesting because to me it kind of looks like coffee beans thrown onto a table. You can kind of see there's space in between them. You don't have any visible fibers. It's clear, glassy, microscopic appearance because of unusual fineness of the collagen fibers. The articular cartilage, costal cartilage, trachea, larynx, fetal skeleton. Articular cartilage is where bones touch bone. Costal cartilage is going to be on the ribs. It eases joint movements. And then the trachea holds the airway open. It moves the vocal cords in the larynx and helps with speech. Elastic. This is different because now there's visible fibers. And these visible fibers are elastic fibers, so that's why it's elastic cartilage. This is going to be for flexibility and elastic support. External ear, you feel the top of your ear, that's your elastic cartilage. Your epiglottis is also going to be using elastic cartilage because it needs to be flexible. Fibrocartilage. This is going to have very large and wavy collagen fibers. This is going to resist compression and absorb shock. So this has to be the one that's in between our vertebrae. And if you look down here, the fibrocartilage is making up the intervertebral discs. This provides the shock when you jump, when you sit, when you walk, when you do anything. It provides the cushioning so this bone doesn't smash onto that one. Also in your pubic symphysis and then the meniscus in your knee. Bone. We're going to name the bone, name the main parts of the bone and their location, but we're not going to really do that until we look at the bone chapter, and the bone chapter doesn't really happen until chapter 7 and 8. So that's your next test. So what we're going to look at here, we're just going to look at some major structures of bone tissue, and then we're going to revisit those when we look at chapter 7 and chapter 8. So two types of bone: spongy, because it looks spongy, and compact, because it's much denser. And this right here is going to be an example of compact bone because there doesn't look like there's a lot of space. They look like there's a bunch of circles surrounded by a center. So compact bone is arranged in cylinders around a central Haversian or an osteonic canal. So Haversian or central canal is going to be that center. Then there's going to be laminated circles on top of each other. Those are going to be concentric lamella. And they're concentric because they just go around. And they're laminated because there's one on top of another. And they're onion-like layers around each central canal. You also have an osteon. So an osteon is the central canal in every single one of the surrounding lamella. An osteocyte is going to be found in mature bone cells that occupy a lacuna. And lacuna is that little space. You have a canal caniculi, which is going to be a small, delicate canal that radiates from each lacuna to its neighbor, so it allows osteocytes to contact each other and to talk and to communicate. And then the outside is going to have a very tough fibrous connective tissue covering. That's called your periosteum. Now we're on to the final one, blood. Blood, we're really going to focus this when we do AMP2, so I'm just going to talk about basic things. Blood, we most know it's fluid. It's going to transport cells and dissolve matter from place to place. It allows transportation of oxygen and carbon dioxide, but we're going to look at three main cells. You have red blood cells. The red blood cells are what's going to be doing, it's what's going to be carrying the oxygen to the tissues and carrying the carbon dioxide away from the tissues. You're going to have leukocytes. Leukocytes are white blood cells. Leukocytes are going to be neutrophils, eosinophils, monocytes, lymphocytes, all of these different types of white blood cells we're going to learn in circulatory system are going to be these right here. And then finally, you have these little dots. There's a little purple dot right there and a bunch of purple dots there. Those are platelets. These are actually cell fragments that are involved in clotting and other mechanisms. And in A&P2, you'll learn about this special megakaryocyte, this huge cell in the bone marrow that's going to break off little fragments of itself, and they're going to create platelets. But for right now, just know platelets are found in blood, along with white blood cells, which are going to be leukocytes, and then red blood cells, which are called erythrocytes. And that concludes this lecture.